Thank you.
Okay, can go ahead and call the meeting to order. Okay, today is June the 9th. This is the City of Laredo Ethics Commission meeting, scheduled for 5:30 p.m. The time is 5:32 p.m. Let me go ahead and go through roll call. First one, Sigifredo Perez on present. Ms. Adriana Alexander, I understand she's out of town. Mr. Alfonso Boyer Ornelas. Mr. Vidal Cantu.
Present.
Mr. Saba Zapata.
Present.
Mr. Eugenio Belmares.
Present.
Mr. Daniel Elizondo.
Present.
Mr. Adolfo Martinez.
And present.
Very good. We have a quorum, I believe, correct? Okay, very good. Okay, this next item is general citizens communications. I don't know if anybody signed up.
No, sir.
Okay, then we'll proceed to item number 3. Item number 3 is approval of minutes for the meeting of February 10th, 2021.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Do I have a second?
Second.
There's a second. Any discussion, comment, corrections? All those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Against? Motion passes, the minutes are approved. Next item, we have one item on, to discuss, consider today. It's a report pursuant to section 2.11 of the City of Laredo's Code of Ethics pertaining to complaint as against Mr. Hector Lee Patino and regarding his representation of North American Industrial Park. Potential violations of the identified sections of the ethics.
Chair, point of order. Let the record reflect that Commissioner Ornelas is present.
Very good. Mr. Ornelas.
Good afternoon, gentlemen, everyone present.
Okay, Ms. Castellon, you wish to proceed?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alisa Castillon. I'm an assistant city attorney with the city attorney's office here for the city of Laredo. Today's item on the agenda is in regards to a 211 report. For those of you who aren't familiar, a 211 report serves as a way to inform the commission of a potential violation of the ethics code, to provide you all with an opportunity to determine whether or not to conduct an investigation and or have an evidentiary hearing on the matter. So, as you all know, the report was provided to you all. Just to go over the facts of this particular case, this was filed in regards to possible violations. I'm gonna go and pick this up. To possible violations of the City of Laredo Code of Ethics as allegedly committed by Mr. Hector Lee Patino in relation to his failure to register as a lobbyist. There is an entity known as the North America Industrial Park who submitted a petition to the city to create a public improvement district.
Ms. Castellon,
Yes,
I'm sorry
Mr.
for
Smith.
bothering you, but,
Of course.
and the Code of Ethics, is that for city employees only or for the whole community?
It applies to all city officials, and because Mr. Patino is considered or could be considered as a lobbyist in this particular matter, he would fall under needing to follow the Code of Ethics.
And
as
he
well.
registered and,
Well, that's what is at issue here,
so
Mr.
then
Zapata.
why, if he's not registered, so,
Well, that's the issue, is that whether he was actually required to register as a lobbyist, and because he has not registered as a lobbyist, if there is a violation of the ethics code.
Yes, and if I may add, Mr. Commissioner, that is in fact the case. So the Code of Ethics provide that people who do in fact engage in the act of lobbying need to comply with the ethics code. So although they are not city officials, at least they shouldn't be. I mean, city officials should not be lobbying. But in fact, if they engage in the act of lobbying, whether they're city officials, because the fact that they're participating in this particular act that is protected, where they're engaging with either city officials or elected officials who are also city officials, then they must comply with this rule of registering. And so the ethics code does apply in this particular instance to someone who's not a city employee, if in fact the commission were to find that there's evidence that there was lobbying. So the key here is to look at the ethics code, see if there's lobbying that occurred. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, but the ethics code also applies to the general public in their engagement with any elected official or city staff member. There are places within the code that someone who is just a citizen may violate our ethics standards.
That's true. There are some provisions that could apply. In this particular case, it would be for the actions of needing to register
Register
as
as a
a
lobbyist.
lobbyist. Yes.
thank you.
You're welcome. So, so there was an entity known as North American Industrial Park that had submitted a petition to the city to create a public improvement district. That was ultimately denied by city officials. It was brought to the city attorney's office attention that Mr. Patiño may have been acting in the capacity of a lobbyist in his representations of this entity as a representative of them to advocate for this particular project, that being the public improvement district petition. Because it had been brought to our attention, we did send him a letter saying, in the event you are engaging in lobbyist activities, please refer to the Code of Ethics, and if applicable, please register, because at that point, there had been no registration by Mr. Patiño. That letter was sent to him. It was acknowledged as received by him in an email, which I believe you all have, that was submitted to you all in the report. Additionally, Mr. Patiño, well, I'm not sure, let me backtrack. He had, in his representations to different city officials, he had advocated for this particular company, asking for the public improvement district, from what I understand, to be approved, and some other favorable action to be done for this particular entity. Additionally, he did communicate with Councilmember Rodriguez to advocate for this entity and this particular project to be put on the agenda for May 17th, 2021. This was after the letter had already been sent to him and had already been acknowledged as received by him. At that particular council meeting, it was put on the agenda, and he did sign up to make a public comment on the item. At the meeting, he signed up, and prior to speaking, the city attorney, Mr. Benavides, did caution him that there was some evidence that he was lobbying for this particular item, is not registered as a lobbyist, and that raised a concern that he could possibly be in violation of the ethics code by providing a comment and lobbying before council. Mr. Patiño did confirm that he heard Mr. Benavides' comments and stated that accordingly he wanted his comments regarding the entity and the be expressed by his friend, Mr. Frank Shirafa, to speak on his behalf. At that point, Councilmember Vanessa Perez questioned Mr. Shirafa's relation to this project, to which Mr. Patiño advised that he requested Mr. Shirafa's assistance to speak on his behalf due to the letter he had received from the city attorney's office. Although Mr. Patiño did not confirm whether he was acting as a community activist or as a representative on behalf of Patiño Consulting Firm, to which it's believed that is his consulting firm, he stated that he is not lobbying, but rather advocating for this project. However, what is important in that exchange, he did state that he has not been compensated yet, but he could be compensated in the future, depending on whether the item passed, and that he actually hopes to get compensated. That exchange was also provided to you as an exhibit of the minutes of that particular meeting. And it's also noted that Councilmember Vanessa Perez is a person of knowledge, with knowledge of relevant facts in regards to the representations that he made as a representative of this entity and for this particular project, and as you all know, she is present here today. The applicable sections of the ethics code that are potential violations are section 501 definitions, which are section B that define client, define compensation, defined expenditure, lobbyist, lobby or lobbying, and also city question. I believe that section city question was not included in your report. However, it is applicable to define what a city question actually is. Additionally, section 502, persons required to register as lobbyists. Section 504, the registration, which includes A and B separate registrations, initial registration. Section E, the required disclosures. Section G, the fee. Also, section 5.05, the quarterly activity reports, which section A talks about the required disclosures. And most importantly, section E, which talks about the contingent fees, which specifically the contingent fees state that a person, which are part of the required quarterly activity reports that need to be filed with the city secretary, it specifically states a person shall disclose employment to lobby on a contingent fee basis, as well as any arrangement to engage in lobbying activities on a contingent fee arrangement. So in applying these facts to the specific sections of the code that are applicable, the representations that Mr. Patino made to city officials that he was a representative of North America Industrial Park to advocate for favorable action, as well as actually placing the item on the agenda for favorable action to occur at the council meeting, it reveals that he was a representative of this entity. Also, the fact that he made statements that he could be compensated in the future, depending on whether the item was passed, that could qualify as compensation as defined in the code, and specifically if he did have a contingency arrangement with this entity to be paid for his actions. If he did receive compensation, or if he did have a contingent fee arrangement with the entity, he would have been required to timely register as a lobbyist, as well as submit quarterly activity reports under oath concerning compensation received, or which would have also included the disclosure of contingent fees or any arrangement to engage in lobbying activities on a contingent fee basis. So based on the facts, the application of the applicable sections of the code to those facts, what your role is today is simply to make a determination on whether you all believe this warrants an evidentiary hearing. At that point, Mr. Patino would be given notice. He would be given an opportunity to be present at the hearing, to provide his position on the matter. You would also be able to hear evidence from likely Councilwoman Vanessa Perez, to her knowledge on the facts of what happened in this particular case, and any other witnesses that may be relevant at that time. But essentially, that is what your role is here today, to make a determination on whether you all would like to proceed on an evidentiary hearing. And I don't know if y'all have any other questions.
Ms. Castillo, I have a question.
Yes.
Did Mr. Patino provide any kind of response to the complaint?
This was a 211 report, so it wasn't an actual complaint. It wasn't sworn by anyone. Based on Section 211 of the Ethics Code, we have a duty to report to you all any violations that may have occurred. Being that this was done publicly, that we were made aware of it, we wanted to bring it to your attention via 211 report for you all to make a determination on whether you believe a violation could exist or does exist, and proceed to an evidentiary hearing. So at this point, there isn't a complainant or an official sworn complaint.
Okay. And did Mr. Patino at any point in time, to your knowledge, indicate why he did not want to register as a lobbyist?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Any questions from anybody else?
Mr. Chair, during the council meeting, he did make several statements. He said that led you all as staff, as the city staff, to believe that he may be engaging in these activities?
Well, the fact that he had actually had meetings with city staff on this particular project, I understand that there had actually been text messages with city officials that he was a representative of this entity. And specifically the fact that he did communicate with Councilmember Rodriguez to place the item on the agenda, which was ultimately placed on the agenda. All of that led to us knowing that he was representing the entity. We just didn't know if he was being compensated. And so at this point, that he was able, and well, at the point of the meeting, that was when he relayed to the public and us that there could be a contingent fee arrangement that took place.
Mr. Chair,
How difficult,
excuse me, Mr. Chair, the point right now that we're at is that there is evidence that he was representing the firm. We see that through the text message and everything else. But what we don't know is whether he's triggered the compensation portion of it.
Correct.
If you were not to be compensated, would that change the substance of the violation or the potential complaint?
Well, it would depend on what arrangement he had with the entity.
Well, ultimately, from what I understand, that there may be a contingency, and that contingency is covered in the ordinance as well. So
Correct.
the mere fact that he might get paid would trigger, right?
Correct.
Okay, fair.
Okay. Now, in addition, how difficult is it to register as a lobbyist? Is there something that would, that for any reason that he wouldn't want to do it? I mean,
I obviously can't speak to the reason as to why he wouldn't want to do it, but as far as a procedure, from my understanding, it's simply filling out the forms with the city secretary.
Okay.
I
And,
guess-
and and I know that the city secretary is always available to answer any questions that anybody may have regarding filling out any kind of forms and being in compliance with everything that's required.
Maybe what Mr. Cantu meant was more, what was the legislative intent? Or why do we have the registration of a lobbyist? Because you want to show that there's a conflict of interest or there's a motive? Is that the,
Well, there are many, many reasons for legislative intent, but certainly one of them is to first make the official aware that the person that is approaching them is someone who is in fact registered a lobbyist and is in fact trying to get something done. But it is, I think myriad of reasons that we would want lobbyists to be registered so that we can make sure that we are following all rules, and that the city officials are following all rules. And so there's not any undue influence that's not regulated or protected. And when you lobby, you have to have certain things that you have to follow, and we can regulate that a little bit better. And so I think that's pretty much, I don't know, Ms. Castillo, if there's something else you want to add?
I think that pretty much covers it. I mean, I think the intent is to be transparent more than anything else with what's going on, so that anybody who's advocating for any particular project, it's clear to city officials possibly their motives for doing so.
And sorry.
Go ahead.
I understand that, there's no sworn complaints, no sworn statements, things like that, and it's preliminary, but I mean, there are various public statements right now. Is there any statement right now that North American Industrial Park themselves has said? I mean, on the subject matter, I mean, wouldn't there be some compensation through them? I mean, have they discussed, have they put out any statement, anything like that? I just didn't see it in the.
At this time, not that I'm aware of, but that could be something that could be looked into should you all choose to go to an evidentiary
Right.
hearing.
Okay.
I mean, there was some indication, and I guess in the evidence that you all have, some indication that maybe shows that there could seemingly was compensation, including what happened at the city council meeting. It's just obviously, that finding has to be made, obviously, not now,
Right.
not by us, but by you all, and on another day. Right now, you're just trying to see is do I think there's enough to even move it forward, or am I just gonna dispose of this? That's what we're here today. Or, those are the two options, yeah.
Yeah. When was the first time that Mr. Patino made contact with a city official regarding this?
I'm sorry, what was that, Mr. Smith?
When was the first time that Mr. Patino made contact with a city official regarding this issue?
And I don't know, we won't be able to conclusively establish, but what evidence do we have of the first contact? Because the way the question was phrased is, when was first contact? Well, we couldn't conclusively establish, but we have evidence as to what we know to be the first.
Right, we have some evidence that could be presented at the hearing.
Okay, all right, so there was contact
Correct,
and with a city official.
correct.
And aren't all city employees, like we are here, we have taken that course, the Code of Ethics, Did anybody warn this gentleman and say, hey, you're acting as a lobbyist, you better go, are you registered? Was there a red flag at that time?
Well, that's why the letter was sent to him. Once it came to the attention of our office, we did send him a letter saying, if
But
you are
before
acting
that,
essentially.
before that,
Prior to that, the city attorney's office had not discussed or sent anything to him regarding
Well,
the lobbyist.
let's put you guys aside. So who did he make a contact with regarding the fact that he might be acting as a lobbyist?
I don't know that he actually specifically said the words lobbyist, that he was acting as a lobbyist. I wouldn't be able to attest to that. What I do know is that he did make contact with city officials and did say that he was essentially reaching out on behalf of that particular project, of that particular entity.
And at that time, did anybody tell him, hey, you're acting as a lobbyist, you need to register?
That I'm not 100% sure of at this point. That's something that would be able to come out at the evidentiary hearing, Mr. Silva.
Yeah, and if I may add, sir, I think part of that is, so there was a process, like if someone maybe was approached, if he approached an official about Northwood or this company, it wasn't like, I mean, I'm here as a lobbyist and I'm not registered, something that's open like that. It's more, I want to talk to you about this. The city official's not really sure what's going on, and they approached city attorney's office or city management, then that's when the letter was triggered. We sent a letter out saying, hey, there's a possibility maybe that you might be considered lobbying or be paying. If you are lobbying, you need to register. And so I think that's how the process necessarily played out, because it's not quite as obvious, and then that's why we're here also with you, to make
Well,
that.
Mr. Ramirez, but this brings back the issue with Blue Cross Blue Shield. The
Yeah.
fact that, you know, we had a conflict of interest, but nobody from the city told Blue Cross Blue Shield or even Mr. Martinez, you have a conflict of interest here.
Oh, I see. So, I mean, that's what your point you're making. Okay, I understand, sir.
You know, it's where I think people, city employees need to be sharper and be ready to, I mean, to put the red flag up and warn this individual. Now, if that would have happened, this guy would have continued doing it, then, I mean, he's fried.
Well, something also just for additional information, Mr. Patino did sit on this commission. I'm not sure when he was removed due to qualifications, but he did sit on this commission for some time, and based on the fact that he did sit on this commission, he was likely extremely aware of the requirements of the Code of Ethics, as I know all of you are. So that is something that that you all can consider as well, and the fact that we did bring it to his attention through the letter. And then after he was acknowledged the letter, he still made his representations and was advocating at the city council meeting.
Mr. Chair.
After he was warned, he continued.
In city council, the meeting.
Yeah, but see, the contact was before.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Chairman, I believe I saw Councilwoman Ms. Bettis. Did you want to say something? If you would like to
Excuse me, may I
speak.
ask one question before that? With regards to the conduct that took place at the city meeting, my understanding of the code is that that would not have been a violation, correct? Or
That itself would not, because if somebody's making a public statement at a public forum, that alone would not be lobbying, considered lobbying. That's
Okay.
one of the exceptions in the code.
okay.
One other point, just to be clear, there's two notices. One was mailed, not signed or received. One was an email that you showed as a receipt from your office. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, but
Yes, once we got notice that the letter was not, or that came back unclaimed, we went ahead and emailed the letter to him, and he acknowledged receipt of the letter.
Mr. Chairman, at this moment, we don't really know, Mr. Chairman, whether or not he ever disclosed prior to the city council meeting where he says that he is a representative, that he was a representative leading up to maybe a meeting that he had with the council member at that point, and whether or not he was compensated. So it's hard to hold the council member accountable for that when the individual may not disclose whether he's
Correct.
advocating as a citizen or a lobbyist
As a
or a consultant or just someone who has a general interest in the project.
Correct.
So it's really difficult, again, having seen hundreds of people walk in and advocate for everything from street paving projects to, secondary water. It's hard to tell unless they tell you, I represent so-and-so, or they may just have an interest. So it's hard to put that back on the councilperson. So the person who is actually approaching the councilperson should be the one disclosing, hey, I represent so-and-so, I am a paid consultant to them, or I am a lobbyist. And again, at some point when they are approaching city officials, that's when that trigger, if they're getting compensated, is done. If that,
Correct.
okay, fair enough. So at this point, from what we know, from what we've seen at the council meeting, what we have before us, we do know that he has made statements himself that he represents the firm.
Correct.
Whether or not he's been compensated, we don't know that, but there is a possibility that he has a contingency contract with them, which he himself said,
Correct.
I have. Whatever the case may be, might or might not get paid, depending if the item goes through, I think is how it's worded in the document we have before us. So I guess my other question, Chairman, would be, absent of this body requesting an evidentiary hearing, how does one file a complaint, a full-fledged complaint that this body has to hear?
Well, at this point, that's why it was presented as a 211 report, and essentially, if you all decide to go forward with an evidentiary hearing, it would be like you all ordering the investigation, not that it's an official complaint by you all, but that you all feel that it warrants an investigation, and that's pursuant to, I believe it's section 803C, which gives you all that power to conduct your own investigations. So it doesn't need an official complainant or an official complaint. It's just, we have a duty to present to you possible ethical violations, and they need to proceed according to how you all would like.
But in other words, Mr. Chair, if I may, just for clarification, there's no mechanism to file an official complaint.
Well, someone can file an official complaint, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
there's
not
definitely a mechanism here to
Beyond,
file.
beyond the 211, they can come in and
Oh,
say, I've
definitely.
got all the evidence available to me. If this body chose not to have an evidentiary hearing and enough evidence were available, that person could make a direct official complaint.
Correct, yeah. Nobody would be prohibited from filing an official complaint.
Got it. And so what's being requested of us today is whether or not to proceed to an evidentiary hearing.
Correct. That would be what you all would need to decide at this point.
And the standard is good cause under the code.
And the standard is good cause under the code.
Any other questions?
One more. The trigger word I think Commissioner Belmais brought up was just, he talked, I could get compensated. From legal point of view, could is aspirational, I will is mandatory, meaning, oh yeah, I've been retained. Is there any other language that was brought up that was like that mandatory, that I will, or?
Based on what he said at the meeting, we do have that. I know that there were other representations regarding compensation that were made to Councilwoman Perez.
Yeah, because I saw that she does have
Yes.
something that she wants to share, I
And
guess.
and that would be something that could be, would be talked about at the evidentiary hearing.
Okay.
So there is additional information that I know she has,
That she could present.
that she could present under oath when you all have those particular questions.
I got, maybe I was premature then with
Because I
that.
think that should be brought up at the actual hearing itself.
I got you, bye. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good, Mr. Moore.
Any other questions? Anybody, well, I'm not sure, I know Councilmember Pettis wished to speak, but I'm not sure if that's proper protocol for this.
She may speak if y'all would like to hear from her, if y'all would like to,
There
it's
would
up to
be
you
no
all.
issue going forward, assuming she spoke with respect to an evidentiary hearing?
There wouldn't be. I would just caution you all that these wouldn't be. It wouldn't be testimony under oath. It would just be for informational purposes. That should y'all choose to go to an evidentiary hearing, that would be the opportunity, and really the best opportunity for Mr. Patiño to essentially cross-examine and
Have a rebuttal.
and have
or-
his own questions. So that would just be my only caution to y'all, but she's more than welcome to speak with whatever questions that y'all have, and y'all can, and you can, you know.
I don't have any questions, I don't know if anybody
Well,
else.
but just so that, Mr. Chairman, so that there isn't any prejudice of the case or the complaint down the road, maybe it's just better that we wait, but then,
Correct.
you know, I certainly at this point would make a motion that there is sufficient information before us to have an evidentiary hearing.
I second that motion.
The motion to good cause, I think, is the term.
Yeah, most of good cause.
So your motion, Mr. Belmont, is that there's good cause
There's good
presented
cause
to proceed to an
To proceed to
evidentiary.
an evidentiary hearing.
And there's a second by Mr. Zapata. Okay. Any questions, any comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Motion passes.
I would just say that, I don't know when you all would like to schedule it. We could do it at the next regularly scheduled
Yeah, regular schedule.
meeting, which is in July. I think that would be sufficient time on our end. I don't know if you all,
Do you already know when in July?
What day in July would that be?
I believe it's
The
July,
second Wednesday.
it's the
in
first
July.
Wednesday of the month, so I believe it's the
No, second.
8th.
The second,
Or the second Wednesday. Oh, then it may not be the 8th. It may
I will
the.
be out.
you won't be here?
I will not be here.
On the 8th?
It'll be the 14th.
Oh, it's the 14th.
14th.
Would the 14th work
Warrior
for
won't be
everyone
here.
for the evidentientiary hearing?
So far, yes.
You can try. I mean, schedule it and then hopefully we'll have a quorum and then we'll proceed. If not, we'll put it off to the next one.
It's up to you all. You all,
Yeah, I'm gonna be here, so.
I may be, but I'm almost certain that I would be.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I do have one other question. Because this is a public forum, and I suspect that whatever's decided here today will reach the ears of the folks who are the parties involved. Does his registration as a lobbyist cure the violation?
Oh,
Are there other items that need to be done to cure whatever the complaint may be? Or at this point has a line been crossed that cannot be adjudicated any other way other than through a complaint?
at this point, because the actions already occurred, the violation would have already happened. So it wouldn't be a matter of curing what already happened. It would, if he were to register now, it would just be a matter of him now following the ethics rules. But it wouldn't actually cure the
But he would have still
actual
have committed.
violation.
was it denied too? Was it also? Okay.
Fair enough.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay, so the next item is executive session. I don't believe there's any reason to go into executive session,
No.
correct? Okay, so do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, sir.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second by Mr. Cantu. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion passes. Thank you.
Yes.